Redditors who lived in old/haunted houses, what's your mysterious story? We live in a 150-year-old farmhouse. The first week we lived here, my iPhone was sitting 5 or 6 feet away from me, hadn't been touched in a while, like 20 minutes or more, and Siri just said, "You are in my realm." There was no history of the phone saying this, or of any activity. A few months later, my cat woke me up, waited at the foot of my bed and kept meowing until I got out of the bed. She went to the top of the stairs, and waited until I followed. Followed her downstairs and she just sat in the middle of the room. I checked a few things to make sure something hadn't caught fire or whatever, while she just sat in the middle of the room looking up the staircase. The house was so quiet it was eerie and disturbing. Usually something makes a noise in this place. I turned around to go upstairs, and thought I stood in something wet and bent over to check, but it was just a weird spot that was so cold, I thought my socks were wet. When I stood up, I felt a hand on my right shoulder. Nobody was there. Doors occasionally open, and TV remotes constantly go missing. We've lost I think 5 now, and have never found one. Every single piece of furniture has been removed from the TV room during renovations, so it's not like something ended up in a void under the couch. 2 years ago, I was at a flea market and bumped into a former coworker I hadn't seen in quite a while, who ended up living just around the corner. She pointed at a couple and said to go introduce myself, as they lived in our house in the 80s. I introduced myself, said I live in their old house, and they immediately asked how the ghost was doing. Apparently it had a thing for TV remotes back then as well. I was staying in an apt over an old theater in a mining town. Apt was easily 60 foot above the street. Woman, blue-hued, in long dress, just appears in my peripheral vision. I turn to look. And she does the same. We meet eyes while she pauses there watching me. She then walks across the room and out the front wall of the apt over the street. I look out the window and nothing. I'm like, I need sleep. I mention this to owner and he explains there was a balcony there but it was lost in a fire decades ago where a woman died trying to escape said fire. Now it's a solid wall where a doorway was. He just added, long blue dress. Like bro. Things you could have mentioned in the housing ad. I lived in a house once where the previous owner's wife died there. He left a bunch of furniture including a rocking chair with a matching rocking leg rest. So one night I came downstairs for a late night snack, had to been after midnight, and I was the only one down there, and there is this rocking chair and leg rest just rocking away all by themselves in sync. I lived in an old house with my dad after he was divorced. Money was tight, and he lectured me many times to not leave any electronics on so the electric bill wouldn't be outrageous. In the mornings, I would stand in the living room looking out the window, waiting for my ride for school to drive by. Only one home, house totally silent. Suddenly start hearing a woman talking, but very muffled. I would compare it to the sound of someone talking on a phone way on the other side of the house. I thought the TV was on. Bent down and hit the power button only for the TV to turn on. WTF. I look at the phone, thinking maybe it was on. Nope. Checked radios, etc. Nothing is on. Walk back into the living room and listen closely. Sounds like a woman having a conversation with someone. They're talking about sewing needles and materials. Sounds like it's coming from the other side of the room, so I walk closer to hear better. The voices now sound like they're on the other side of the room I just came from. That was when my hair stood on end. That moment you realize something isn't normal. Quickly ran outside and waited for my school ride LOL. Got home and told my dad about it. He told me he also heard a woman's voice one morning while working out, but it sounded distant and conversational. He didn't want to tell me because he didn't want me to be scared by myself in the house. I still think about it today and it was a very baffling experience. I moved into a house built in the 1890s several years ago. A few weeks after moving in, before meeting any neighbors, I heard heavy footsteps coming down the attic steps outside my bedroom. I then heard footsteps on the staircase for the first/second floor, and someone say my name. My husband was 30 miles away, nobody in town knew me or had access to my house, and there was nobody outside at the time. I grabbed my baby, phone and keys, and ran outside to wait. We searched the house top to bottom and never found anything, but I've heard the footsteps multiple times. We have no upstairs plumbing or HVAC, so it remains unsolved. I've also heard music playing downstairs. Talking to previous owners, this was common. It's just commonplace now, and we don't always have stuff going on. A lot of major remodeling has been done, so I guess maybe that's why it's happening. Honestly, the repairs are scarier than anything else. My dad was killed before I was born. When I was still in elementary school, I would feel someone tightening the cover on my bed at night. I would look around the room and didn't see anyone. When I told my mom, she told me it was my dad tucking me in. She said that he wanted me to be a girl. Also, sometimes I would be out flying in the sky like the birds on his back. He would bring me back home when it would get dark. Then I would wake up and look around the room, and go back to sleep. It didn't scare me. I grew up in an old house in Michigan that was built just after the Civil War. In that area, much of the state was still pioneer era. It's haunted as hell. Whenever you go outside after dark, it feels like you are being watched from all sides by hostile gazes. The basement is the same way. One night I was trying to sleep, it was about 10:30 p.m. I heard someone in the small room that borders the upper left corner. I heard them get up and begin pacing. They walked from one wall in the room to the other. Each time they would go further out of the room, the sounds walking through my wall and then go back. This repeated until the footsteps stopped at my bed, and then I never heard them again. One year on a snowy Christmas week, my mom heard someone go up the stairs. They smelled strongly of cherry cigars. They walked down the hall to my sister's room and banged on the door. It scared the hell out of her, especially when nothing was on the other side in the hallway, just that strong cigar smell. One time I was doing my homework in my bedroom. I heard the TV in my sister's room turn on when no one was in there. Then I heard the volume climb slowly on the statusy screen, and by the time I went in there, the volume was as high as it would go. I unplugged, it shuddering. One morning my sister was getting ready for school. She walked into her bedroom to see all of her dolls thrown all over the room, and the chair they were on had been flung to the opposite side. I was sound asleep and would not have done that. The last two stories are the kickers. I was 17, it was snowing hard outside in mid-March. Again, it was about 10:30 p.m. I heard a sudden, deep intake of breath, a gasp from hollow lungs. I thought it was my imagination and tried to sleep. Then I felt an overpowering presence lean over me and an aura that was extremely cold. I heard more of the hollow breathing, my eyes squeezed shut and trying to get my breathing under control. I was too scared to move. Then I felt a powerful hand grab my left arm and that hollow gasping sound in my ears. The hand felt as cold as the grave is supposed to be, and then suddenly the presence left. I ran downstairs, terrified, and have not slept a full night in that room since, 15 years later. When I was a senior in college, my dad was replacing windows and insulation. When he got to the outside wall, he found a single-barrel shotgun. It was covered in verdigris and the wood of the stock was pitted. After he pulled it out, the chair in the living room had been dragged to face that wall. It made no sound and we came inside the house, looking baffled and scared. We since had the gun appraised. It came from the turn of the 20th century, and my dad jokes in bad taste, suggesting it was murder weapon. There's more I am probably forgetting, but fuck that haunted house I grew up in. My sister and I were just reminiscing the other day about this house we grew up in. We lived in a townhouse in a complex of low-income rental homes for most of our childhoods. Very bad vibes in general. None of the three of us kids were ever alone in any part of the house at any time because we were dead terrified to be. I peed the couch once because my mother refused to accompany me upstairs to the washroom, and I was too scared to go alone. The house was built more upwards than outwards, so it was a long tall steep staircase and long hallways. The bathroom was at the end of the hallway, and you had to cross the hall at the top of the stairs to turn on the hall light. We've collectively experienced a few events ranging from bad feelings, recurring nightmares, strange occurrences, to apparitions. Strange events include my sister sleepwalking to the top of the stairs and screaming at the top of her lungs that I was going to die. She never did sleepwalk again, and to her chagrin I am alive and well. Apparitions include the man sitting at the dining room table the morning of my birthday, and the child in the stairwell window that had no landing to stand on beneath it. That was the only time we saw our parents acknowledge we had a problem, because we were looking at it from outside the house. We were the driveway, all five of us and our dog in the car after a camping trip. We stayed with family friends that night. There were poltergeists in the apartment where I was living. We were three flatmates, one guy that did not believe in anything paranormal, and me and my best friend. I started hearing noises at night. Our two bedrooms were side by side and there was something knocking from her side, like something made of glass. We investigated. Turned out it was the bottles she kept in her room shaking by themselves at night. Got worse later. Some of her clothes were teleporting to my room when we were outside together. One day I was spending a week alone there. I heard my keys shaking on the door when I was trying to sleep. The morning after, I found the strap, 5 centimeters long, of my keys completely and tightly wrapped around the ring that was holding my keys together. Same day, there was a black mass in the corridor and the curtain of the bathtub was moving by itself. I still remember the sound it was making on the metal pipe. Nearly got an anxiety attack. I called my best friend and she came back early from her holidays to stay with me. My dad called a medium and a lady to make a spiritual cleanse. An apartment I lived in years ago was the scene of a triple homicide, drug thing. It had been about a year from the time of the murders and when I moved in. The place was professionally cleaned and building owner gave me a great deal due to what had happened. GF at the time, who I never mentioned the circumstances to me getting a great place, always said she was cold, especially at night. It could be dead of summer and if she slept over, she would be under a blanket while I was on top of the covers sweating like a dog. She bought a candle from a Botanica and lit it because she said something bad must have happened there. I never told her about the killing. When I was about 4 years old, my parents lived in a farmhouse. My two older brothers shared a bedroom upstairs. I slept in my parents' room, I believe, which was downstairs. Both of my parents, and both of my brothers, claim that the story is true. On various nights, in the dead of night, the window in my brother's room would suddenly fly open. The room to their door would open and shut. Then there would be footfalls on the landing, think open walkway that looks down onto the living area, towards the stairs. The footfalls would then go down the stairs. When my parents heard my brothers scream, then the footfalls on the landing, they would rush towards the stairs just to see, nothing. The footfalls always ended at the bottom of the stairs. We didn't live there long and finally moved into another house. I used to live in an old farmhouse with my parents. It was about 300 years old and had been a working farm at one stage as well as a pub and eventually a family home. Although it was pretty rural, it was situated next to a church, in the graveyard of which the previous owners and their young, 7/8 years old when she died, daughter were all buried. It had been empty for around 30 years when they bought it, so needed completely renovating. Some info for context. The stables were converted in the kitchen diner with a bar above, and the other part of the house was over 3 stories, the top of which was converted into a large landing, bedroom and bathroom as a bit of a guest suite. A lot of things happened in this house, nothing serious but still spooky enough for me to believe it was definitely haunted. I'll try make them brief. My aunt and young cousin, maybe about 2 at the time, were staying one night and slept in the guest suite. The morning after my cousin was playing in the bedroom, she suddenly stopped what she was doing and pointed over to a corner and asked, "Who's that, mummy?" To which my aunt replied, "No one is there," only for my cousin to ask again. A few people including my nan and a few friends, none of whom knew about any spooky goings-on at the time, have said they have felt someone sitting on the bed with them in that guest suite. My nan eventually refused to sleep in that room anymore when she came to visit. We had a dog at the time who would often stare at the ceiling and bark, which she had never done in any previous house or ever did since moving out. She also would never venture up to the 3rd floor. My bedroom was directly at the bottom of the stairs to the 3rd floor, and my door would regularly rattle at night, no windows open, etc., to the point where it would often keep me awake. I also didn't realize until after moving out and sleeping soundly that I used to have nightmares of something on my bedroom ceiling. They only happened when living in that house. I can't describe what it was, but it didn't feel friendly. I would also often have that feeling like someone is behind you. I can't think of any more at the moment, but I'm sure there are more. My grandparents' house has a ghost of an old lady that literally sits in the corner of the guest room and knits. I've only seen her twice, and both times only frightened me because I never expect to see her. House not too old, 1950s, but haunted. After I moved in, I used to walk into my room and smell fresh flowers. I'm no gardener, so don't have any in the house. Heard a man's voice call my name one night. No one knew my name in my town, and the house next door was empty. Heard slippers scuffing up the hallway on carpet that I just removed. It all felt pretty peaceful, just an older couple keeping an eye on things. One night I heard a man cough in my lounge. It felt sinister and freaked my dog out, so I smudged and crystalled. Nothing since. I lived in my parents' guest house when I was younger. One night my kids were crying in the other room and I got up to check on them, and they were on a bunk bed. When I went in their room, 2 shadow figures were leaning over them and turned to me. I screamed and ran towards them, grabbed them with the shadow figures beside me and ran out. I never screamed like that or felt fear like that before. I never actually believed anything about the paranormal world until I turned 18. I moved into a huge bungalow in London, Enfield specifically, with my ex-boyfriend. There was other people living there too, my friends and their dad plus their partners. There was a lot of us. Me and my ex got the loft room. You had to pull these metal stairs down from the loft, walk up them, walk through the loft to get to the room. That itself was quite creepy, how there was just a random room up there, which was boarded up when my friend's dad moved in. Anyways, a few weeks later, my ex got up at 6 a.m. and left for work. I went back to bed. I was laying down trying to sleep until I got really cold all of a sudden. Didn't think anything of it until my body completely froze and I heard a deep male voice whisper in my ear, "Ah." I was so scared. Eventually I got up and ran down the stairs and told my friend's dad. He said he didn't want to say anything to me, but he told me the house is haunted. Bearing in mind, this house was right next to an alleyway and didn't have any houses next to it, it was quite secluded. He then started telling me all these different stories of what he's seen and heard in the house, when all of a sudden, a golf ball started rolling along the windowsill, jumped over an ornament and fell on the floor in front of us. We stared at it the whole time and just looked at each other like, WTF. I genuinely couldn't believe what I witnessed considering the conversation we were having. That's when I started to realize that there's something out there. I started believing in paranormal stuff. I noticed a lot more stuff in the house happening, but I tried to ignore it because I had nowhere else to go. Most of the time when I was scared was when I was in the loft room on my own because I could see and hear a lot up there. I'm happy I'm out of there now though, because I do feel like it had a bad effect on me. My moods were horrendous and everyone in the house were always arguing. When my mom was about 8 months pregnant with me, my parents were trying to decide on my name. they weren't sure whether I'd be a boy or girl. So in my house, built in the 1800s, there's a mini room through this coat closet that has a window overlooking the creepy basement stairs. Basically, this house is super wacky. My two older siblings, both less than 5 at that point, were unable to write their own names at this point in life, important to the story. They would play in this weird room. My mom would clean up the room pretty regularly because of my siblings. My mom and dad finally decided on the names Julia or Grace for if I was a girl. However, one day, my mom went in the room to clean, and Julia Grace was written on the wall. My mom swore there were ghosts in our house, but this felt like it confirmed everything. She panicked, painted over the names, and named me something else entirely.